Do you feel you're being pulled in different directions? You can't find a place between the rhetoric and all those competing voices? You don't know where to turn? Don't know what to trust? Or you just want to hear a lively discussion about relevant issues without picking sides or all the mudslinging? Well, welcome to the Rock Pile. Join us. That's Lewis and Oma. We talk about faith, culture, and a bunch of other messy subjects. You can agree or disagree. It'll be lively, likely messy, but we hope interesting. Come on our journey to understand. No rock throwing, just a rock pile.
Welcome. This is episode 6 of season 2 of the Rock Pile.
The Rock Pile. So today we want to start off by talking about this case that the AG's filed on the 11th Circuit for the Court of Appeals.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so that's the one. Paxton is the Texas AG. And it's case number 22-13005, and it was filed on September 20th, so like 2 days ago.
Yeah. What's
important about this case, now this is an amicus filing by these AGs and other interested parties relating to the appointment of special master in the Trump case in South Florida.
Okay.
And remember, we had that one case where the warrant was issued, then the Trump team filed for a special master, and this government said, no, we don't want this, and all the other things we were talking about. That case has been appealed to the 11th Circuit. It's pending before them now. This is an amicus. And
what is an amicus?
It's a friend brief. It's like, This is a friend of the court. So what we're giving this as information as we're interested parties, and we'd like to give you this information. The court doesn't have to accept it, but they generally do. And they look over them. So then essentially the AGs are saying, here's what we think about what the court should do.
Okay.
And the legal precedent behind what we believe.
Oh, okay.
What's important about this case is, there's this phrase that Oliver Wendell Holmes used, and the AG brings it up in their case. It's called turn square corners. Essentially, there's a presumption that the government is acting within its authority and has done the things necessary to fulfill this constitutional requirements under the due process clause. And it's done those things. And essentially, I've completed all 4 corners of what I'm supposed to do.
Okay.
And then later on in the 10th Circuit, probably a decade ago, I think, in reading the case, it's mentioned in there. And I'll leave a cite to that in the notes and the place where they could find it. Because I would encourage them to read it. It's a 21 page, but probably 7 or 8 pages that it kind of gives you an idea. Now, you would think they're doing this to support this Trump matter. It's really not about that, in my opinion. It's really about getting the court to understand that this presumption that they want, that they've fulfilled all 4 corners, the government really hasn't been playing really fair with clean hands in these things and others. And they cite a couple of, about 4 or 5 of them. Let me look at So essentially what they've argued in here, and I'm kind of give just a general summary, is there's some things that they point out that the government has done the administration has done over the last 2 years. And those things show that they really shouldn't get the benefit of that presumption because they haven't really been playing fair, quote unquote, doing a lot of gamemanship. Remember we talked about last episode that in order to affect the electoral votes or the House, the division of power in the House, one has to have a long game version of this. And so now they work on trying to get additional seats and then trying to flip states so that way they can maintain and control power and then, forever. That's, or at least as long as they possibly can to make the agenda they want. The liberal progressives have agenda. They have had since 1900.
Absolutely.
Okay. So part of the thing is when they bring these issues up, they talk about the CDC and the eviction moratorium and how that was essentially argued that was unconstitutional. But the administration and the delay that happens between a filing of a matter and a court hearing it, they went and enacted anyway. Well, at the end...
That's not unethical or against the law?
Well, no one's told them it's wrong. So they're acting as if it's right until someone tells them it's wrong, knowing full well likely it's not. And so what did they do? They handed out a bunch of money, and then when they come to find out it wasn't constitutional, the CDC didn't have it.
Mea culpa or something like that?
They just basically said, my bad.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So they bring that up. They bring about the mandate of the V that was moved because they couldn't get it through Congress. So they went through another agency. And the previous President Obama made a statement in a speech, said there's multiple ways to skin a cat. Well, here's the way this is. So if they couldn't get it legislative, they go through the administrative agencies. Remember, we talked about bloated agencies. The progressives want this. So what they do, they went through OSHA. And then when they found out that wasn't constitutional, my bad.
So they do workarounds.
Well, this is what they're saying. This is a workaround. And they're not only that, but the AGs explain it pretty succinctly about how they're using the court system is in gamemanship. So really what it does, they're using the system, but they're playing the system. And in the legal profession, my opinion, my view, we're supposed to come in this and work it within the system, not work the system. And when the judges start to realize you're working the system, is an issue because you're not coming with clean hands. You're coming deceptive. You're trying to use the system manipulatively. And you file something, and like for example in this case, they say, well, we need this expedited because it's very important, but you filed an appeal, which delays it. So what is it? It's either really important or it doesn't really that important because you can delay it in appeal. That's what we keep asking people. Think about the behavior. Think about the behavior. Now, one final thing about this, what's important is, as you go through the case, look at the sites, the things he's citing of, like the vice president says that the borders are secure. Well, one only has to open their eyes and see that's not true. And what are they fighting about? People getting shipped around the country. Well, clearly it's not secure because the arguments are getting back and forth about people getting shipped. One only has to look at what happened in Bexar County, Texas, when that box full of illegal immigrants was found and people were dead on the side of the road. We used to live in Texas.
This happened often.
This happened.
Yes, it did.
Too often. And so you see people injured, getting kind of getting up here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not secure. It's not safe.
Yeah.
So one only has to open their eyes. Look what's happening over in Europe with Russia and their allegations about the United States and what it's doing all over the world, or alleging what's doing all over the world. So you get first they tell you, no, there's no labs there.
Then they say, we do have a few.
But we're only doing that to clean up the mess. And then the story gets changed to, well, we have them there. We've been doing experiments, but it's for good stuff. And then basically they just been telling the UN to veto any investigation. So one has to ask that question we keep asking everybody to ask. If someone keeps telling you something and changes the story, how long before you realize they're not
to be trusted
because they're not fulfilling the square corners. They're not coming at you with the truth. They're hiding some fact. Well, why is it? Why are people afraid of this transparency? And you say, well, you can call people all kinds of names and say they're just out in left field, but you got to at least be honest intellectually and ask yourself, why is our administration doing this? Why are they doing this? Why are they telling you one thing?
They have a goal. They have a mission.
And then all of a sudden now they come back and say, for example, the 60 Minutes the other day, Biden says the pandemic's done. Well, and he says, we're going to send troops to a foreign country if they get harassed by another country. And what happens?
Yeah, they debunk both.
Well, they end up walking it back.
Yeah.
Well, who's in charge then?
Yeah.
Who's in charge? Who's making decisions? If you were the CEO of a company and you came out and said, well, we're going to do these things for the employees, and everybody's all happy, and then you come back the next day and they said, we're not doing those things because that person wasn't talking for the company. Well, then you would say, well, the CEO doesn't run the company.
Yeah.
Somebody's running it. Who is it? So the next time the CEO comes out, are you going to believe what he tells you or she's going to tell you?
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't. I'd say, well, we'll wait till the other person tells us what's happening. So I'm just encouraging, look at this for the alternative reason at 40,000 feet, why these AGs would file this and put this information as public record. They're trying to educate people as to what really is going on, and look at the government administration and say, if you're not fulfilling the four square corners of this, you don't get the presumption.
Well, you brought up Russia, and I saw something today where Putin made a statement
Yes, he did. Yeah, he had. There was a recall, and you'll see it all over the news. They didn't recall. They called up a bunch of reservists, people who had prior military experience. And you've got to look at this piece at the 40,000 foot level. No one's saying they like anybody or any particular party here. Just look at how the behavior and what's happened. You've got these alleged. We just talked about these labs, right? Well, if they exist, one could probably believe that they're, let's say those labs were somebody else's labs and they're in Cuba. We might be a little concerned about that. Okay, so not picking sides, but that would be a problem. So if you keep hassling somebody, somebody's going to act. Well,
you poke the bear long enough,
and you get a response.
Yes.
And now you got a response. And if the world sees our administration as being weak, indecisive, or name anything, people are going to start to act because now's the opportunity. And because of the ongoing division and drama that's going on in this country, we're distracted. So even our country's not really paying attention to the 40-foot level. They're really just causing all this stuff we're going on. Immigration, things we've talked about.
Right.
Well, one would expect other people who are looking to either move their territory, do the things they've been wanting to do, they've been held back from, what's stopping them? So
he was basically saying, if you're going to keep pushing on this,
well, go ahead.
And threatening us, then I'm going to respond.
That's what he said. Because watch how this. Let me think about this. Let's say they have a referendum coming, right? So they have this referendum of these border regions that are in Ukraine, and now Russia occupies them. So they have this referendum. Let's say all the four little sections there, I don't mean little and insignificant, but 4 sections along that line, vote to enter their federation. Well, what happens then when the West tends to bomb them? You now have just entered into a different scenario than a special operations. And that's the thing that people need to be paying attention to. People have a right to choose where they want to be. This country says it all the time. Doesn't matter whether we like it or not.
Yeah, we're not living there.
We're not living there. And I don't know. And I'm not saying I know. I'm just saying watch this, because these individuals aren't making these bluffs just to be.
No, he's not bluffing.
I wouldn't think so.
No.
You don't use this kind of language at this point, because there's no discussion. There's no diplomatic dialogue going on. And that's not a good thing when you have these individuals are out there and no one's talking. And so
just watch it.
Watch it. Be patient.
Yeah.
Pray. And pray. The Lord will move. Has to, because we got some people that just don't seem to be knowing how to drive this vehicle.
So what is that House in the middle of doing right now? They're trying to pass something.
Yes, they're trying to, arguably what they're saying is they're reforming the Electoral Vote Act, Procedure Act. And remember, go back to the election, the recent one. Well, actually, if you go back to the last 3 election cycles, back to Bush v. Gore, and historically, when a party doesn't win or there's a debate as to the votes or how the electoral college is split, or remember the Chads when we were in Florida?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So that procedure, there's a certain procedure on how that plays out, about how the electoral votes are taken, how the states do these things. Okay. So what they've decided to do right now is to revise that so that it makes it more difficult for someone to challenge any election. Well, the question then becomes, like we always ask, why now? Why not January? Why not when the House gets the votes why not after November, after the election? Why are you doing it right now? Well, it's because they know they likely are going to lose the House, Congress, the majority in November. And so they're going to ramp up and do a lot of things that they can get signed by the current administration before January.
Yeah,
before
push things through.
Why is that important? Because 2024 is coming. This has been in place for decades, if not a century. I don't know the exact date the last change was, but it's been a long time. And we've dealt with it. People object. Okay, we got through it. but they're trying to say this event that happened in January a couple of years ago is some sort of a impetus for that. Whether that is or not, that's the basis by which doing it. Well, that doesn't necessarily change the fact of all the other things that went on during it, allegedly went on. But you got to ask yourself at 40,000 foot again, why now? Why this week? So look at that. It hasn't been voted on yet, but I'm sure it will be. And then it has to go through that process going into before it gets signed. But I suspect they're going to push it through. And anybody tries to object to it, they're going to say, well, that's just because you're a whatever denier. And so that's how they do it. If you don't agree with them, you all of a sudden, that's their pejorative term that they use to shout you down, because if you don't agree with us, you're wrong.
Right.
So back up to 40,000, ask yourself, pay attention to all the little pieces, and then think about the tapestry we talked about.
I hear about the AG who's coming against now pretty much the whole Trump family.
Yes, regardless of what you think about the family or their finances or whatever's going on, they're not bringing any criminal charges. They're bringing a civil lawsuit for fraud. I don't know how that's going to work out for them, but I don't think it's going to be what they expect. But it doesn't matter, because that's not the real point. They're hoping, it's like throwing stuff against the wall, hoping it's going to stick. And so they've been doing this, but it really is more for political points and for news cycle. Because what they want people to believe is that there's something nefarious going
criminals.
on. There's something nefarious going on,
Yes.
and anybody associated with this family is
a criminal.
So they're painting this broad stroke,
Yes.
getting people to be emotional. Remember, we talked about emotional. So we got to stay up out of the emotion and put these pieces together and say, what's the main focus here? The focus is not the individual pieces; it's the administration. That's just driving all this stuff.
Oh, yes.
It's not you and me. But we should be. We are the ones who've consented to be governed under a compact that is called the Constitution. That's what we've agreed to. They are supposed to be doing, I've said this every single episode, they're supposed to be doing what we direct them to do.
Yes.
But they're doing what they want, because liberals, progressive believe that they know what's best for us because they're the experts and we're just proles, as George Orwell would say in 1984, and we don't know any better.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, we do. And we do, and everybody listening to this, you do.
Yes, we're waking up.
And if you're not awake, you should be, and you should be paying attention to what's going on and not get down in the fray.
That's
Don't
right.
get in the fog. Get up on the top, see what's going on, and pay attention. You have to pay attention. Don't pick sides. Understand what's going on. And pray.
That's right.
And pray. And God will give you the wisdom to see and ask him for discernment. And continue to pray for this country. We need
Amen.
it.
That's right. And so at the end of this, we're going to put the things in the bottom,
We'll put the
and we're going to make it the four corners.
that's
right?
we started with the four corners.
Right.
So we want to finish with the four corners.
Yes.
We talked about the presumption that our government is acting with clean hands, but also the four corners is they've done everything they need to do procedurally to warrant us to give them the presumption that they're acting appropriately. What I'm encouraging all of us to do is look at the events that we've been talking about at the 40,000 foot level and ask yourself the question, are they fulfilling the obligations of our expectations of what they're supposed to be doing as it's understood by the Constitution and the laws of this land? Or are they playing games? Or are they selling us propaganda? Or what is it? You have to decide. It's time to engage, as Perot would say again, the little gray cells, and start paying attention to what you see going on and ask yourself, is the government fulfilling the four squares? If they're not, it's time to pick up the phone, get on the internet, and start paying attention and start talking to the people that you have voted for to elected into office, and make them and tell everybody you know that they need to pay attention to what's going on. Because if it's going to change, it has to change with us. It's not going to change on the other way. This has to be from the bottom up. It's not coming from the top down.
Unless it's from God.
Unless it's God. But what we're getting now is a top down for power.
Yes.
And that's what this is all about. And what you're seeing is the fight between two big, huge groups, small but powerful individuals, and they're doing whatever they got to do to stay in power. And that's why you see all this stuff. So if the administration is not fulfilling all the square corners, they don't get the presumption that they're working in our best interest.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining and sticking with us today. Please subscribe to Cairn's Rockpile Podcast. We're on most podcast sites, Spotify, Podbean, Apple, Google, Samsung. Also, our website and spotlighted organization are in the podcast description. Please share it with your friends, family, or anyone you know. Join us next week. Until then, stand firm, be the light, and most importantly, pray. Blessings.